put up a video a week ago, I believe it was, on YouTube where I tried to demonstrate from the left side, even though I'm not left-handed. I figured if I could do it left, then there must really be something to it. How you could throw at about a 10 o'clock angle, even 9:30, almost sidearm, and you would swing open your forward leg a little bit instead of stepping right toward the plate. And that would actually help you channel all of your, forward leg, forward arm with the ball, all of your members going roughly in that same plane. That would give you more energy. You wouldn't have leg going here, arm going there. And I suspect it'll actually, as I've gotten into researching how pitchers used to throw before World War II, it's become kind of staggering. I had no idea that many of them appear to have thrown this way. It's been a real revelation to me. I'm John Harris for smallballsuccess.com, and we usually discuss hitting on our website, which I hope you'll check out, and in our videos, but I'm trying to look into pitching a little bit more. I'm having trouble getting back out on the field and doing some actual demonstrations, and I'd like to do some more demonstrative videos, but as I recover from cancer, I'm having to take these hormone-killing drugs that, of course, cancer loves to feed on hormones, certain hormones, to grow. So we're trying to wipe out every last trace of it. And unfortunately, some of the same hormones are things you need to repair your muscles and your joints when they've had a good workout. So my muscles are kind of having some trouble recovering. And here I am inside. It's also a little bit cold outside. Tomorrow's the first day of fall. Thank goodness. I didn't know that we would ever get here. So I'm just going to talk about this a little bit today. Let me bring up a photograph. This is I think it appears to be a pretty typical follow-through. This is a guy that they called for some reason Wee Willie Sherdel. He wasn't that wee, he was 5'10". Even though we're talking back before World War II, pitchers tended to be about 6 feet even then. So I want you just to notice, and I've talked about this in a previous video actually, but let's just reprise it a little bit. I'm sure that he's throwing from about 10 o'clock. He's not coming from high overhand. And some of the things that say that to me are of course, the arm is following through, not more or less straight up and down like his bottom leg, but it's going this way. And look at his left leg. He's a lefty. His left leg is also kind of pointed outward, and the knee is bent and the foot is sort of flopping out to the side. I think if he were going straight toward home plate, this foot would be dragging or maybe even settled onto the ground and not obviously lifted high in the air like that. Now, you can find photos of guys from this period. I don't even know if I can name all the ones that I've come up with. Dickie Kerr, he was actually a rather short one. There are a lot of guys from this period who from what I've seen, more than half, well over half. It seems like in the 20s and 30s, perhaps 75% of the hurlers were throwing this way. And they didn't really have arm problems. Consider how many pitches they threw. They were expected to go 9 innings. They were expected to throw 300 innings if they were starters in a season. And yeah, some of them had arm problems, but they also didn't have our modern medical techniques. And it's amazing how far those guys went without their arm falling off. So maybe this is actually kind of a healthy way to throw. Now, I don't want to give you the wrong impression. And I know that I'm sort of arguing against today's orthodoxy. I'm going to use online guru Paul Reddick as example of a guy today who's telling us how we should throw, and I think Paul's lessons are they ought to be listened to. I think he's a very knowledgeable fellow. But let me first of all give you the quick overview of Reddick's, which is really the best of contemporary coaching's pedagogy about how to throw. Paul has this thing that he calls a wall drill. You stand up against something like this bookcase in this case, or a wall, or a fence, and you practice your pitching motion until you've got it to where your rear arm, the hand with the ball, is not hitting anything. If you're hitting the wall before, if you're hitting the wall at all, it means that you're coming back with that hand too quickly. You're not getting your weight forward fast enough. So I think of the late Roy Halladay as a perfect exemplar of this style. So you stay low, and some coaches say you imagine yourself pitching through a tunnel. You're stepping far out and right toward the plate, and when you follow through, you want to almost chase your chest into your glove. So pump. My hand is not anywhere near hitting that wall when I take that lurch straight toward the plate. Now, what could possibly go wrong? I mean, you've got all of that drive coming off the rubber. You've got that, strong core, strong rear leg, the things that pitchers work on so much today. You've got all of that. Think of Nolan Ryan, Tom Seaver, all of that moving toward the plate. You can throw your breaking balls, your off-speed stuff off of that powerful fastball. It seems so obvious that nobody would question that the way we do things now is infinitely better than the way we used to do things. And I wouldn't really question it myself now that I'm older and wiser. When my son was young, I'll raise my hand. I was one of the fools, and I still hear coaches teaching this today, who would talk about the balance point, where you get your weight straight up and down over the rubber so that you get balance, and then you'd go forward and look at that arm come out, and the back's going to arch and the head's going to fly out, and you're going to step out. That's what we're going to talk about here in just a second. You're going to step out, and you're going to put a lot of strain on your back and your upper body, possibly leading to injury farther down the road, which is something that none of us should want in a young pitcher. But in a more practical sense, you can't hit the dang target because you're just flopping all over the place instead of driving right toward the plate. Now, Willie Sherdel and these other guys, so many of them from before the war, why were they getting away with stepping out, as I'm sure they were? Obviously, they were able to hit their targets and able to get people out, but how could they do that? I think they were actually reaching a kind of a balance point. I think that's probably where that teaching came from. It's probably very, very old. But they were not arching their back and not throwing their head back, because they were doing more with their forward arm. And that's why in that video that I cut last week, I emphasized how important it was to use the lead arm to keep your energy running where the opening front leg is channeling it. Try to get all of that in the same plane. The central member here, the lead arm, may be the key to the whole thing. Instead of just having it holding the glove and basically lying there almost dead, you have it actively participating and generating some real thrust here as it slings downward. I didn't emphasize it on Willie's photo, but in a lot of those old baseball cards, you'll notice that in the follow-through, the rear leg is up like this, but the lead arm is kind of down like that. It's not like that. They've, I think, really use that arm to throw their weight in this plane, this 10 o'clock, 9:30 plane, which their pitch is going to follow. So you can balance, but then because of this arm, you're not going to be able to rear back. You're going to stay on track. I like to think, and I'm even going to test this as soon as I'm well enough to get back on the field and do another demonstration. I'd especially like to test this left-handed, because you may, if you looked at that other video, you may have heard me gripe about not being able to get my hand to stop coming up too soon. And I'd like to work on having the front arm and the rear hand, almost as if the front and rear hands are holding a spear and they're throwing it in conjunction. So have that little balance, and then the leg kicks out and goes forward. The front arm goes back at almost the same time as the rear one comes up, and then they follow each other closely. I think that's you're going to have a little more trouble hitting the target that way because you're going east and west and as well as north and south, but that's why it's also tougher to hit. And although you'll probably get less velocity, velocity is only part of the equation. It's going to be harder to pick up the ball, I would think, with all that floppy hand motion, glove coming through, and then the ball. I'm really excited about this. I'm really excited to learn that lots and lots of pitchers of yesteryear actually threw this way. That's and in fact, or at any rate, that's what the photographic evidence. I haven't seen a lot of video evidence because, again, there's just not much video from those days, but it appears to me from what I can make out in photographs that this is the way they threw the ball, and they did so quite successfully and quite durably. So let's just keep on with this. I'm still building on theory. I'm not suggesting that everybody should do this. I'm especially looking for ways that guys of shorter stature might be able to find a way into the game. I don't think the Paul Reddick, Roy Halladay, Nolan Ryan approach is, I just don't think a short pitcher can do that and compete with the tall guys. But I think that this opening up and throwing from a low overhand, almost a sidearm angle, is something that a person with a shorter, broader body type would be better able to do. And yeah, all the guys back in the 20s and 30s who were doing this were not short, but a bunch of them were. So, yeah, all of this, I think, is very promising.